Hello and welcome to Master Edison Format. This is the channel for you if you tend to get better at Edison, if you want kind of advice and analysis on how to get better at Edison, how to improve your game, how to win more games in Edison Format. And today we're with another episode of the Get Better at Edison series. This is episode 6 and we're going to cover kind of some of the most common monsters you see in Edison and how to play around them, how to kind of mitigate the effect they have for your opponent, and kind of giving you some kind of real examples from some of the most common decks and some of the most common cards played in the format. So kind of starting with the monster lineup, I mean here I kind of try to put a lot of the most common, the most generic monsters you're going to see in Edison, some that are played in the main deck and some that you find more in the side deck. You know, some of these are very rarely played, but a lot of these you see basically any deck plays them. And kind of starting off here with the Blackwing package, the reason kind of why Blackwings are so hard to play against is that every monster has a kind of very annoying effect. Even Bora has a piercing damage, Shura can summon from deck, so it's very hard to kind of play around everything. But generally speaking, like, you know about the Gale. The Gale is kind of the one that's played in Bio Turbo, it's played in a lot of decks. It's one of the ones that kind of the only way to really avoid kind of getting hurt by the Gale is summoning something that has more than 2600 attack. That way they can't attack over it with the Gale. The Carrot, when you play against Blackwing, you always have to be careful about the Carrot. This is like the same goes for Honest in the right throne or in the even Fairy or in the kind of right decks. Like you always have to pay attention and kind of avoid attacking unless you have, you know, you have a way to around the Carrot, or if you really you only attack if that's the only option you have. If you have some way to play around it, you know, you try to do it. Sirocco, this is something that you both can side in against Blackwing, or that you also play around if you're a Blackwing player, because if you have a very strong established board and your opponents as a Sirocco, they can do a ton of damage to you, because this thing can become huge, can get so much attack from also your monsters. So that's something you always want to be careful. And generally speaking, in Blackwing mirror matches, the second player to use the Sirocco is the one who has the advantage, because they get to basically use Sirocco on their opponent's Sirocco. So that's kind of just a general idea. And this also in general, like, this card is played in Bio Turbo, in Blackwings. Like you kind of have to be careful that anytime you summon something, even something like a Ryko, which is generally very good against Bio Turbo, it can easily get attacked over by a Sirocco that your opponent might have. Caius, this is maybe the number one card you're always trying to think about in Edison. Like I have to say, like the Caius, this is, you're always trying to not leave anything on the field that Caius can hit. Like Caius is just such a strong card overall. Like especially if you're going first, being able to turn to Caius your opponent's Ryko or Hamster or any set monster or anything they have is very, very strong. So this is something that there's very little you can do, frankly. The only thing that actually stops this is pulling the rug or Solemn Judgment, or some type of skill drain, or of course cards like that. But generally speaking, like you're not really expecting those. You're not gonna often have those. So the Caius, the only thing I can say is like try to get them the worst target possible. Possibly not a dark monster, but even if it's a dark monster, don't give him, give them something that if they banish, then you can summon Gorz off of, or give them something that, then can, you don't care them answering, and then in the turn after you can attack their Caius again. That's kind of the main advice I can give for Caius. Other than that, there's very little you can do. Try to not leave anything on the field that you'd rather not get Caius is my only advice there. Gorz, another thing you always have to think about. If you're attacking direct and your opponent has nothing, you have to be careful that they might have a Trag or a Gorz. Usually Gorz is played in more commonly. But yeah, a lot of times it's kind of a mind game. They don't always have Gorz. Sometimes they will have it, sometimes they won't. Generally speaking, you have to kind of figure out by the matchup and by what your hand looks like. If you have like a Mirror Force, then it's not so bad to attack into Gorz, because you can protect yourself with the Mirror Force. But if you attack into Gorz and you don't have anything, and the Gorz is going to be able to answer your whole field, maybe avoid attacking into that. Herald, this is most common in fairies, and yeah, this is just something you always have to think about. It's kind of like similar to an effect bearer or in other formats. In Edison, there's very little end traps, so you don't have to think about bearer maxi, but you do have to think about some end traps like Honest, Karu, Herald, in specifically against fairies, Diddy Crow, and cards like that. Honest, we talked about this is, when you play Ryko, this is a constant threat. You always want to try to bounce their stuff with Brionac or, play around this the best way you can. And same thing with something like a Ryko. When your opponent sets a monster in Edison, you can not guarantee, but there's a very high chance what they set is a Ryko. It could be a Dandelion, it could be a Hamster, it could be Dupe Frog, but there's a high chance if you know what the deck is that's a Ryko. So, what does that mean? That means like if you're attacking this thing, you have to be prepared for the monster you're attacking with to get destroyed. So attacking this with a Sangan or a Vayu or a Dandelion or even a Card Trooper is actually a pretty good trade for you, because those are monsters you want to get hit anyway, and you actually make a plus of that trade. Snowman Eater, this is not so common, but it is something that once in a while you run into. This is kind of a tricky, I would say it's more of like a side deck card or something played in decks like Quick Throw Hero as an extra water monster. It's not something I think you constantly have to worry about, but it's just something to note. Hamster is quite tricky because you always have the decks that play Hamster also play Ryko, and you always have to be careful. Not careful, try to think about which are you attacking to. For example, if you have you're attacking with Bora and you're attacking Ryko, that's pretty good because you do damage, it's a 1-for-1. If you're attacking Hamster, you don't do any damage and they summon Ryko, and that's not so great. So always something to think about with this. So yeah, you have to kind of figure out which one you think your opponent is setting. Tragedia, same as Gorz, it's a good end trap from the hand. When you're attacking and your opponent, like a Dragon Turbo player plays Tragedia, are you okay with them summoning Tragedia and then you have a very viral monster and they can pitch something to steal it? For example, you have a very good Level 8 monster, Dragon Turbo plays tons of Level 8s, and then they can use Tragedia to steal a monster and you don't have anything you can do about it. In that situation, it's better not to attack or not to attack into the Tragedia. I only have Dupe Frog just because this is a classic example of the monster that misses timing. There's other ways to make monster effects like this one miss timing, and so that's one way to kind of mitigate and play around this. Also, Dupe Frog is part of like the Dupe Rock, and there's many ways to kind of break the Dupe Rock. Caius is a common one, Brionac, Ryko, like all of these cards can kind of do have this purpose of breaking up the Dupe Rock. In the side you have a few different things that are commonly sided. Consecrated Right against dark decks or like Blackwings. The only really thing you can do against this is play Deck Devastation Virus, play Icarus Attack, play all these cards that help you out it. Icarus Attack is probably the cleanest answer to something like this. Cyber Dragon, this is something especially if you're like Blackwing, GB, Right Zone, it's something you have to think about. Or machine decks, you have to think about, your opponent siding Cyber Dragon, so are you going to leave all your machines to get hit by this? It's something you have to be careful about. Crow, this is in every side deck. If you're a value turbo player, you have to be ready for the possibility of Crow. So what can you do to stop this? Maybe if you summon the Kaiku before you go for a combo, your opponent is not going to be able to Crow in response or do anything in response. So that way you can stop your opponent from using Crow against you. Other than that, just kind of thinking about ways to bait out the Crow. For example, with the Plague Spreader, what you really want to do is summon something with the value. Foster Dyna against special summon heavy decks, this is very, very strong. How can you mitigate this? Play monsters that you can normal summon and can attack over this. Even like sometimes playing a Kaiko, even if it necessarily is not the best matchup, but this is a great answer to something like a Foster Dyna. So Grand Mode, this is not so common, but what you can do is try to avoid two special summoning from the X deck if you know your opponent has this or you're siding this. Thunder King, this is something like a Card Trooper is a great answer to a Thunder King. or even a great answer to a lot of these cards, frankly. This is why you see Card Trooper played in many decks, and in Bio Turbo, and it's such a strong card because it does answer very cleanly a lot of these cards. Funny enough, Card Trooper even answer an opponent in Cyber Dragon if you play Chimera Tech in the extra deck. And so this is another reason why, like, it's just such a good card. Vanity's Fiend, I mean, the only thing you can do against this is to just be prepared, have more back row, have like Book of Moons, have you know, things that can like Deep Prisons, things that can respond to this. Other than that, yeah, you have Caius is a great answer to it, but you're not going to always have something to tribute when you're playing against this. But yeah, having Caiuses and cards like that is always a great out. Gale is an out to this. You know, you do have a lot of outs. Ryko is a great out to this. Kaiko, this can actually completely ruin your game. It's happened sometimes, even to me, when I play value, run into a Kaiko. Kaiko can ruin all your hopes of surviving with the Gardener, can basically stop you from using value. Yeah, Kaiko, very annoying card. You know, what can you do against it? Try not to let it attack you. Try to have something bigger like a Sirocco, something to attack over it. Not really too much hours. Even Ryko is great against the Kaiko. I mean, even the Hamster is great against this card. So you do have already some cards inside your deck to kind of mitigate this. And then in terms of the extra deck, what are the most common things that you kind of have to be worried about? Level 6, Brionac and Goyo, these are such strong synchros. Brionac can bounce your whole field, if those monsters are from the extra deck, those are basically completely removed from play. Goyo Guardian, you know, if you know your opponent can make a level 6, let's say they have a Blizzard in hand, you don't want to leave them with something really good that they can steal for their Goyo, so that's something to keep in mind. And then level 7 Black Rose, like if you know your opponent can go into Black Rose with a debris or something, you're not going to leave your whole field kind of uncovered for them to completely blow you out. And even Stardust, like if you know your opponent can sync into Stardust, you have to use your Icarus before they Stardust, or you have to use whatever your bottom is or whatever it is before they go into this card. This is probably the most common level 8 people go into, so generally speaking, either play like Deep Prison, compulsory, some traps that really don't play around this card's effect, or you kind of have to respond before they make a synchro. But this is kind of like a very detailed overview of some of the most common monster that you see played in Edison Format. So here we're gonna go over a replay from the last Patreon's Battle Royale tournament with what will become the winner, Jakey Dad, in the semi-final, playing with Value Turbo against Lightsworn. I've shown this replay on my channel, but I think this is a perfect example of what I mean when I talk about playing around monsters in Edison. You know, it is very well known that like Lightsworn, you have the Honest, the constant threat of Honest, and here in this game you'll see kind of how that plays out. So first of all, here we have, you know, a good play to clear both monsters using with the help of the Gardener. You have again the Lightsworn player goes for Arcus, Deck Devastation Virus avoids the milling as well. Here you have basically Cyberdyne into the Ryko, and we're gonna get there during the video in a second. But here we heavy. Armageddon Knight goes into this, attacks over. He knows there's no Honest now because of the Deck Devastation Virus, of course. And here, yeah, he still does nothing, and it's just game. But going to the other games, you'll see how this kind of really plays a role. So here you already see he has double Honest in hand, and he starts with the Lyra, just leaving the Lyra here on the field. Now, here he starts with the Armageddon Knight into Plague Spreader, and very interesting, he goes into Brionac. He could have gone into a Goyo would have gotten completely blown out, and on top of that there's also a Gardener, so I mean 2 reasons for doing this. But on top of that, yeah, he goes through the Brionac, plays around the Honest perfectly, uses the Gardener again to play around the Honest one more time. Hemi sees the back row. Here he actually does see the Honest in the end, so you know now it's not really a great read anymore because you know about it. But of course this kind of shows you how like really good players don't really even need to see, they already know, they can feel that the card is there, and so he again plays around the Honest again with the Brionac. Now there's a Lumina goes for this, and Royal Oppression is going to shut this down, and again goes to attack. The Gardener protects. He judgments the Lyra, playing around the Honest for the 4th time in this game, which again you really see a very skilled player. Goes for the Armageddon Knight, and then this should just be game. There's no chance here. He doesn't even need the value because he had the crow. But you saw here kind of perfect sample of how on I think 4 different locations JK Dad here completely just outplayed kind of the opponent's hand, and kind of completely had just the perfect lead here. And yeah, very well done. I mean, this is a very impressive game. You know, it kind of shows how he actually ended up winning the tournament by making leads and making plays like that. And I think this is something you should, you know, try to add to your game. I'm not saying that every time you're going to be correct. You know, it takes a ton of experience. It takes knowing the matchup, knowing the cards your opponent plays in this matchup. It takes time to make leads like this. But if you see here, he played around what he had perfectly well, and that's kind of what I really want to kind of hone in for this video. Is it is possible, even if your opponent has very strong cards in hand like an Honest or a Crow or things like that, it is possible to play around them by using using your resources, using, you know, what you have in deck, using the possibility your deck gives you. And so, for example, this Brianna play was perfect for the situation, and on top of that, he even had, you know, he had the Judgment Dragon also to keep stopping this, because he knows about double Honest in hand. If he can avoid them having a monster on the field for the game, then this Honest is gonna be useless, because he can't really use it if he can't keep monster on the field. And yeah, you should subscribe if you like Edison Format, if you like to get better at Edison. Specifically, I do a lot of videos about, you know, with tips, tricks like this one, understanding kind of the cards in the format, understanding the different meta decks, what are the best decks, and so on and so forth. And if you want to get better at Edison, you should subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.